Good, 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 good. Good day, everybody. Y'all see the topic. Let's get into it. I'm gonna give everyone maybe 15, 30 seconds for the whatever platform you are watching on to populate. Then we getting right to it. Hope everybody's having a great day, great week, great month. And we're going to get into our topic that we need to get into here today. Y'all see what the topic is: how to achieve more by actually doing less. So all of you have heard the phrase less is more. You want to know how that works, how it can actually be applied to your life. And this can apply in your business. This can apply in the gym. This can apply in your relationships. This can apply in your career. Anything you're doing, how can you actually achieve more by doing less? And the reason why this topic matters so much is because, especially in Western society, those of you who are from the Western world, you know, if you are old enough, you have enough experience that anytime we are coming up short and not getting the outcome that we want, what is the normal default response? Normal default response, and usually what you hear from people, motivational speakers, influencers, successful people, etc., is what? They immediately start telling you how, well, you obviously are not trying hard enough or working hard enough. That's the reason why your thing is not working, because look at me. I'm more successful than you and I work harder than you. So that must be the difference. It must be the fact that I work harder than you. And that's the reason why my stuff is working and your stuff is not. This is a false idea. And it's a false idea because it's not completely true. So anything that's not completely true is false. And is it possible? Is it sometimes the difference between someone and two different people is that one person is just working hard than the other person? Is that sometimes the case? Yes. But is that always the case? Absolutely not. There are people who work really hard who still don't have success. And there are people who don't seem to be working hard at all, but they seem to be very successful. And it's almost like they're not even trying. So if we can point out these differences and these incongruencies with this concept, all of you need to accept this idea of this. It's not even an idea, the understanding that just because you're working really hard does not mean it's going to lead to success, and doing less work does not necessarily mean less success, because it's all about what kind of work you're actually doing. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of 35 books. I've done 4 TEDx talks. I created this brand called Work on Your Game. Our whole goal here is to help you perform at your highest level, do so consistently, and produce results. That's what we help people do. Perform at your highest level, done consistently, to produce results. We are in a results-based business. That's what our whole business is about. That's what I'm about. And that's what I give to people like yourselves. And what we do is we extract the stuff that I know works for the highest level athletes, and we apply it into the business and professional world, minus the push-ups and wind sprints, but the stuff that actually works from the mindset, strategy, systems, and implementation aspects of the game. So let's get into it. Point number 1, we're talking here today about how to achieve more by doing less. First thing you need to understand or remember, if you heard of it before, is what we call Pareto's principle. Some of you know what Pareto's principle is, and some of you may know it by its more common term, which is called the 80-20 rule, or the 80-20 principle. Principle states very simply that 80% of your results come from 20% of your inputs. And this applies across the board in anything you do in life. So if you have a business, 80% of the money that you make is coming from 20% of your customers. If you have clients, 80% of the money you make from your clients is coming from 20% of your clientele. If you go to the gym and work out, 80% of the results you get from the gym are coming from 20% of the things you're doing in the gym. If you are in a relationship, 80% of the happiness of that relationship comes from 20% of the stuff you're doing. And if you're in a relationship and things go wrong, or there's an argument, or things are not working for whatever reason, 80% of the reason things are not working is based on 20% of the stuff that you are doing or that you are not doing. If you read a book, for example, 80% of the value you're going to get from the book is different for each person, is going to come from 20% of the book. All right. So even if you read the whole book, 80% of the value came from 20% of the book. You go listen to someone give a speech, 80% of what you remember comes from 20% of the speech. All right. So everybody got it. This is how the 80-20 principle works. So in any aspect of life, 80% of your outcomes, the outcomes that you want, are coming from 20% of the things that you are doing, 20% of the inputs. In short, so if we put this in more plain language, most of your results come from few of your actions. Most of the results you're getting in any aspect of your life are coming from just a few of your actions, which means most of the stuff that you're doing by deductive reasoning, most of the stuff you're doing is doing nothing for you, yet you're still doing it. This is the first thing you need to understand. And once you come to this understanding, then your mind will be open for the rest of what we're going to share here today. Most of the stuff you're doing is producing very little return on investment, yet you keep doing it. And this is the first understanding of the 80-20 principle. If you can grasp this, then your mind will be open to, okay, well, let's look at what I'm doing so I can figure out what to get rid of and what to do more of. Most of your actions you're taking, especially those of you who have had this ingrained in your mind since you were a child, hard work, hard work, hard work. Anytime things are not working, you obviously need to work harder and put in more time and more effort and show up earlier and stay later. And that will solve all your problems. And the challenge with this, there's several challenges with this. One is that sometimes you have actually put in more hard work and it did work. You ended up getting more results after you put in more hard work. So you have correlated hard work with results. And there are times when doing more hard work can lead to results, but it's not just because you did more hard work. So, for example, if you're trying to solve a problem and you don't know how to solve it, you're completely clueless, then you decide, well, instead of sitting around and doing nothing, I'm just going to try a whole bunch of random things, a whole bunch of random hard work, and eventually you land on a solution by luck. Well, guess what? Doing more things and giving more effort did lead to the outcome, but it wasn't just because you did more things. It's because you landed on that random thing that actually worked. Now, see, if someone had been able to tell you that instead of you having to do all these random things and find it by luck, you still could have got the result without the hard work. All right. So you see, by, again, deductive reasoning, this is how you can start to debunk some of the beliefs that you have in your mind. So it's not just hard work that solves everything. And again, it's not that hard work is a bad thing. My whole brand is called Work on Your Game. So I'm never going to tell you that hard work is not good. But at the same time, I have to let you know that just defaulting to hard work every time something's not working is not the solution either. So there's a whole lot of space in between those two. Everybody understand what I'm saying here? So most of the actions you're taking, again, are useless when it comes to producing your most essential results. Let me say that one more time. Most of the actions that you are taking are completely useless. They are producing nothing by way of results based on what you are looking to try to achieve. All right, what you're trying to achieve right now, most of what you do is doing absolutely nothing for you, yet you're still doing it. And this is what the 80-20 principle explains. And this applies to every person out there, because once you pick that 20, you can do it again. You can pick the 20 again. You can keep doing it to keep fine tuning and sharpening the sword of what it is that you're doing. Your job, here's the key to this, now that you have come to accept the 80-20 principle, those of you who maybe you're just hearing about it or just maybe constantly thinking about it for the first time, is your job now is to separate the 80 from the 20. This is the hard part. The hard part is not accepting the 80-20 principle, because it's a principle, whether you accept it or not, is still true. The hard part is, how do you decide what is the 80 and what is the 20? And if you make a mistake here, you could actually go backwards, even though you applied the 80-20 principles. You applied it to the wrong parts of your thing. Your job here, and to figure out what is the 80 and what is the 20, what I help people do is deconstruct, is figure out what's actually producing the result. What is the result you want? What's actually producing the result? What actions are directly leading to that result? And how do we deconstruct what pieces go with it? And then we look at everything else you're doing and say, what is this actually doing? And we question it. We scrutinize every single thing. And this is what we call sacrificing your sacred cows, because a sacred cow is just an idea or habit or belief or action that you're holding on to and that you're doing over and over and over again, even though it's doing nothing for you, but you're so used to doing it. You are so habitually connected to doing that thing that you keep doing it, even though it's not really doing anything for you. And you never even question, do I even need to do this? Is this even necessary? So when you start asking yourself these questions, you'll realize that there are some sacred cows you need to get rid of. And as I talked about this in the last stream that I did, but I'll tell you all again here today, that when you level up in life, you're often doing less, you're not doing more. So when someone goes to the gym and lifts weights, a person who spends an hour and a half in the gym lifting may be doing a whole bunch of extra stuff they don't need to be doing, where someone else can get in there and lift for 20 minutes and get roughly the same result in a whole lot less time. Why? Because it's only 20% of what that guy who's in there for 90 minutes is doing that's actually producing the result. Everything else is just window dressing. And in the sales world, for example, I remember I was having lunch with a friend the other day, and they were talking about getting more traffic to the website. They want to get more traffic to their website because they're trying to sell more of their products. Well, understand, most of the traffic that comes to your website are a bunch of people who are not going to buy anything. I got to pause connection on Instagram. Most of the traffic to your website are a bunch of people who are not going to buy anything. Most of the people following you on social media are never going to do anything other than follow you on social media. So it's not just a volume game. And this is, again, in Western society, this has been ingrained in all of us that we're just in a volume game. So I just want more people to see my stuff. I want more followers on social media. I want more customers and clients to come into my business. No, that's not what you want. If the goal is producing results, then the goal is you want more of the right people, which may mean fewer people overall, but is going to produce more results. So would you rather have 1,000 people who are willing to spend $10 a piece, or would you rather have 100 people who are willing to spend $1,000 a piece? Now, if you have 100 people willing to spend $1,000 a piece, you have fewer people, but you make a whole lot more money. And there's a lot less effort to serve 100 people than it is to serve 1,000 people. You understand? And also, just as a note, the more invested people are, the easier they are to work with, in my experience. And every entrepreneur I know can co-sign that. So people who are the type of people who you want are often fewer in number than the masses of people. So this is another thing that I tell entrepreneurs: do not be fooled by social media vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are just numbers that look good, but they don't actually do anything for your bottom line, like followers, comments, engagement, likes, subscribers. It's cool to get them, but that's not the reason why you're in business. You're not in the business of likes, followers, comments, and subscribers. You're in the business of receipts, transactions, customers, and sales. Was two completely different things. Because again, any of you who's on the internet and you have a business, don't you notice that most of the people following you on social media ain't never bought nothing from you? All right. So again, these are two different businesses. You got to understand your business model versus the social media applications business model, because TikTok has a business model that ain't the same as yours. All right. Their business model is get as many people as possible using the app all day. That's how they make their money. Do you make money by doing that? If the answer is no, then that means y'all are in two different businesses. Doesn't mean you can't use it. I use it, but you got to know what business you're in. Moving on to point number 2. Topic once again today is how to achieve more by doing less. Number 2, you got to test everything. I just touched on this in the first point. So once you accept the 80-20 principle as a reality that can apply to yourself and your things, next thing is you got to test everything. And I'll take questions at the end, by the way. You got to test everything and figure out what is in the 80 and what's the 20. What is the 20% that produces all the results? And how do you figure that out? You got to look through every single thing that you're doing with a fine-tooth comb and eliminate what needs to be eliminated and keep what needs to be kept. And then you do more of that thing. So if you're working 8 hours a day, it's not necessarily that I'm saying, okay, now you only got to work 2 hours a day. Not necessarily. You can still work 8 hours a day, but you're going to work 8 hours on fewer things. So instead of spending 8 hours a day doing 10 things, you're going to spend 8 hours a day doing 2 things. And you're just going to put all your time into those 2 things. So you're doing less. You can do the same amount, but you're only focused on a few things. And we tend to do better when we're focused on less things than we're trying to do more things. Human brain can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you're trying to do 10 things at once, you're dividing your attention and your focus between 10 things. But if I cut that 10 down to 2, you're going to do better at those 2 simply because you're giving more of your resources to those 2 things. So when you test everything you're doing, you will realize that some of the things you're doing are not contributing at all, yet you're still doing them. I've said that like 3 times already. All right. So you had to do what we would call, like, for example, any of you ever did an elimination diet? So if you were having some type of reaction physically to food that you were eating, but you weren't sure which food was causing the problem, then you do what they call it an elimination diet. And the way it works is, let's say that you always eat certain things every day. You eat eggs, you eat sausage, you drink some milk, you eat some greens, let's say some spinach, and you have pancakes. And what's one other thing you can have? You have an apple. All right. So let's just say every day you have all those things, you eat them for breakfast, and you're having a nasty reaction in your body every day after breakfast, but you don't know which food is causing the issue. So the next day you eat all the same stuff, except today we're going to leave out the eggs and let's see how I feel. You're still getting a reaction. Okay. Then it's probably not the eggs. So the eggs can come back in. Then the next day, let's eat everything, but we're going to leave out the pancakes. Still getting a reaction. Okay. Next day, let's leave out the apple. Next day, let's leave out the milk. And eventually you come upon something. Oh, I got the reaction, but the day that I left out the sausage, I felt great. And then when I brought the sausage back in, I got sick again. Let me just eliminate the sausage. Maybe you'll find out that the sausage is the actual issue. And that's a simplified example of it, but this is the way that you got to test out what you're doing in your business. And it doesn't mean you got to go a whole day not doing it. It just means you got to look at it and ask yourself, is this producing results? Yes or no? Now, the only way you can answer that question, is X producing a result, is first of all, you need to be clear on what a result is. What do you mean when you say result? I told you at Work on Your Game, we focus on performance done consistently to produce results. So what is your result? Because the results that I'm looking for are not the same as the results that you're looking for. And you need to know what result another person is looking for in order to help them. So if I was helping you, first thing I'm going to do is find out what your goals are. What are you looking to achieve? And once I understand that, now we measure every single thing you do against that goal. Everything is measured against the outcome. This is an outcome and results-based business. This is not a how you feel-based business. This is not a what you're going to do-based business. This is not a work as hard as possible-based business. It is about producing the result. So when we are clear on what the desired result is, everything we do gets measured against the result. To give you an example, you think of a sports team. Right now it's football season. So let's say that the Kansas City Chiefs want to win the championship, right? Let's say that's their goal for the season. I think that's their goal, win the championship. So everything they do needs to be measured against, does this get us closer to winning the championship or not? And anything that's not getting us closer to winning the championship, we should not be doing. Does that make sense? So any of you who's in business, what's the goal? Is the goal of the business to get a bunch of followers on TikTok? Is the goal of the business to increase your engagement? Is the goal of the business to send a bunch of emails? Or is the goal of the business to make money? What's the goal? Now, again, it doesn't mean that those things cannot be done. Doesn't mean you can't use social media. Doesn't mean you can't send emails. Doesn't mean you can't get engagement. But they all need to be put in their proper place. It's like on a basketball team, everybody needs to know their role. All right, the starters know their role. The leading scorer knows what his role is. The backup knows what their role is. And the guy who sits at the end of the bench and doesn't get in the game, he knows his role as well. So the roles matter. Everybody got to know their position. So if you're running a business, for example, and you're using social media and your goal is to make money, then social media needs to be doing things that put you more in a position to make money. And if it's not doing that, you need to drop the social media. Simple as that. So the question you would ask yourself is, how does my use of social media contribute to my goal of making money? And if you cannot answer the question, then we need to make some adjustments. Doesn't necessarily mean you drop the social, but you need to figure out, how do I start using this in a more strategic way that is leading me towards what I want rather than just doing it to do it. And a lot of entrepreneurs I find are just doing stuff just to do it. And they have no rhyme or reason for why they're doing it. And if you ask them, they couldn't really explain why they're doing the thing. They're just doing it because it seems like the thing that should be done because you see somebody else who is successful who's doing it. The thing is, they have a strategy for why they're doing it. You don't have a strategy. And I call that grinding blindly. And a lot of people are out here grinding blindly because they have not really thought about strategically, how does every action that I take contribute to me actually hitting my goals? And once you start asking those questions, here's what you're going to find is that 20% of what you're doing is contributing to the goal, and 80% of what you're doing is just busy work that makes you feel good and it makes you look like you're being quote unquote productive and you're working really hard and it's taking a lot of time, but it's not actually producing a result. And again, let me remind you, we are in a results-based business. This is not a just do stuff-based business. It is not a put the time in based business. It's not a hard work-based business. It is a results-based business. So if you could achieve 10 times the results by doing half of the work, would you do it? Open question. Not a pause connection on Instagram. If you could achieve 10 times the results while doing half the work, would you do it? Would you accept that deal? Most people would say yes. So let me ask you, how could you do it given your current resources? Well, the first thing you would have to do in order to do that is you got to assess what half of the work do I need to keep doing and what half of the work do I need to stop doing? And see, in there, the answer to that question, that's where it gets difficult for people because, again, people's habits. Human beings are creatures of habit. We get used to doing the same stuff over and over again. It's very hard to break habits. And this is the reason why many people don't change, because they just get into a habitual pattern of behavior and they never change those habits, even when they hear something like myself right now telling you, we got to get out of these habits because a lot of stuff you're doing is doing absolutely nothing. So you got to ask yourself the right question. Moving on to point number 3. Topic once again here today, and I'll take questions at the end, by the way, is how to achieve more by doing less. Number 3, remember that most of your advances in life are not due to the fact that you did a whole bunch of stuff, even though you might think that's how the advance happened. The advance happened because of one of the things you did amongst all the stuff you were doing actually produced a result, but you have incorrectly assessed, incorrectly diagnosed why it happened. So let's say you're in a position of nothing's working. I gave you this example a little bit earlier. You're in a position where nothing's working. You're trying to figure it out. Nothing's working. So you decide, you know what? I'm going to just throw as much as I can out there and see if something works. And you just do as many things as you can. Whatever you think of, you just go do it. And you just do that for months. And eventually something hits, it works, and you actually make an advance in life. So you might come to me and say, well, see, Dre, I just did a whole bunch of stuff and gave a whole bunch of effort and I got a result. So that must mean that doing a whole bunch of stuff and giving a whole bunch of effort is a formula for producing results. That is incorrect. This is an inaccurate formula. You have misdiagnosed the issue. Yes, you did a whole bunch of stuff and yes, you got a result, but we got to figure out of all that stuff that you did, what actually led to the change. It wasn't everything you did. It was about 20% of what you did. So when we can find out what that 20% was, guess what? You can make another advance if we just do more of the 20%. So it's not all the stuff that led to the result. It was one of the things amongst all the stuff that led to the result. Now that we know it, now you can focus on just doing that, less effort, but achieve more. Everybody understand this formula? Now, the key to all of this is insight. Insight is the key. What does insight mean? Insight is not just information. Because if the key to this was just information, well, then everybody would be making advances and I wouldn't even need to talk about this because all of you listening to me right now have access to the internet in some way, shape, or form. Well, the internet has pretty much indexed all the information known to man, 99% of it, and is available to all of you completely for free right now. Within 10 seconds, you could access any information you want. So information is not the key. So anybody telling you that the information is the key, that's not true. It's insight, which is the key. What does insight mean? Insight means not only information, but which information. Because any of you been to a library before? I don't know these days. I don't know if people even go to the library. But any of you have been to a library, when you walk in, what's the first thing you notice? There's a lot of books in there. A whole lot of information. Every book has information. So if the key to your success is getting access to information, all of you have all your problems solved because there's a free library probably in the town where you live and you can just walk in there and access any information you want. The challenge is you have a limitation of time and you don't have time to read every book in that library. Insight is about which book do you read? Everyone understand? So you walk into a library. I was at Penn State University. You walk into the library on the main campus. It's a huge library. I think they have more than one library. That library is so big. If you just had to touch every book, it might take you weeks just to touch the book, not even open it, just to touch every book in the library. That's how many books they had in there. The thing is, you need to know which book to open. That's part of insight. Part of insight is which book do I read? All right, when all you were in school, you know how they had the tests? And when you took a test in school, usually you had to close your books, right? And if you looked at your book during the test, then that means you were cheating. Well, real life is the opposite of school. In real life, you can look at any book you want. In real life, you do not have to pull all your information out of your head. When you have a challenge or you are tested, you can pull any information from any book or any person you want in real life. In school, you are not allowed to look at anyone else's information. In real life, you are supposed to look at everyone else's information. This is, by the way, as a side note, I've done a stream on this. This is, by the way, why educational system sets you up for failure. It sets you up for the exact opposite of what you need in real life. But anyway, we're not going to get into that today. I've done that already in the past. I may do it again. But insight is about which book do you look in? And then when you open a book, and you ever read a book before? All right, books are pretty big. Back in the days, I don't know if people do this anymore, but back in the days, my parents had a set of encyclopedias at the house. And you had encyclopedias at the house when you were kids. So the encyclopedia is like, those of you who are like under the age of 30, y'all know Wikipedia. I got a pause connection on Instagram. Come back, Instagram. All right, there we go. So y'all know Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia is basically encyclopedias on the internet. So encyclopedias would be like, you would have 26 books, basically like A, B, C, D. Each book was based on whatever letter. So if you wanted to look up antelope, you picked up the A book. If you wanted to look up monkeys, you pick up the book with the letter M. And encyclopedias were these thick books that basically had a good amount of information on any subject that you wanted to cover. So if you were in school and the teacher said, I need you to write an article, I need you to do a book report, not a book report, but a research paper on seals, then you would go home and you would open up the S encyclopedia, find seals, and with that information, you'll write your own report on seals. And if you didn't have encyclopedias at home, you will go to the library at school or in your neighborhood, and you would do the exact same thing. Nowadays, you do that through the internet. You go on Wikipedia, look up seals, and they basically took encyclopedias and put it on the internet. I'm giving you all that to say Just because you have access to an encyclopedia does not mean you have the right information, because which book do you open? Again, which book do you open? And the internet has made this even more challenging, because now at least a book is finite. A book has 500 pages, or is in one of these 500 pages. On the internet, how many pages are there? A zillion. Every day is 1,000, 100 new pages going up every minute. So which information do you look for? This is also part of insight. Which information do you look? Which book do you pick up? Which information do you look for? And then when you find the information, how you know which information is the right information? How do you know when and where and why and how to apply it? All of this is part of insight. Which book do you look in? Which information do you need? How do you know it's the right information? When do you apply it? Where do you apply it? How do you apply it? Why do you apply it? You have to answer all of these questions. These are all part of insight. Information alone doesn't answer any of these questions. It leaves you in the dark. This is why people walking around looking for information are still going to come up short, because information is not what you need. Everyone listening to me has access to more information right now at your fingertips for free than your grandparents had access to their entire lives. And guess what? A whole bunch of people are still stuck. How's that? Y'all thought about that? How a whole bunch of people still stuck now? We all thought information was the key. All right, you got more information at your fingertips right now than your grandparents had their entire life. They're 60, 80, 100 years old. They never had access to all this information. You got all of it for free. You ain't got to pay for it. It's free. And people are still stuck. People still don't know what to do. People are still frustrated. People are still trying to figure things out, even though we got all the information, because information was never the answer. Or actually, it is the answer, but it's the answer to the wrong question. The right question is insight. And my superpower, what I do best, and the reason why I have Work on Your Game University, is because of insight, not because I have the answers to all the questions. I got plenty of answers to a lot of questions, but it's not answers to the questions that provide insight. You know where insight comes from, ladies and gentlemen? This is another counterintuitive understanding. Insight comes from asking the right question. Insight is not about having all the answers. And again, this is how school sets you up for failure. Think about it when you were in school. How do you do good in school? How you do good in school? Any of you, all of you went to school, at least for some amount. Some of you are still in school right now. What's the measure of doing good in school? Is that you get presented with an exam or a quiz or a test, which is what? A whole bunch of questions, and you succeed by having all the answers. Isn't that how it works? Isn't that how school works? If you got a high score, on the SAT, what is that a reflection of? It's a reflection of that you got a whole bunch of questions right. You had the right answer to a whole bunch of questions. Isn't that how school works? For you to graduate from 8th grade to the 9th grade, you had to get enough questions right on the test so that you got a good grade in the class, and now you can graduate to the next grade. And then you go to the next one, and next one, and next one. You want to go to college, you got to have answered a whole bunch of questions really well up through high school so you can get into a college, and then you go to college and what? They just ask you more questions, and you just get good at answering questions. And people who have 4-year degrees, if you want to get an advanced degree, you want to get a law degree, answer some more questions. You want to get a medical degree, answer some more questions. You want to get a PhD, answer some more questions. You want to get a master's, answer some more questions. Moving it up in the educational system is all about answering all the questions. In real life, having answers to questions means absolutely nothing, because everybody has access to answers. Just think about it. Just think about that. Think about the questions you had to answer in school where they gave you a test and you had to have it in your head. And if you didn't have it in your head, you failed the test, right? You would fail. But in real life, that same question, if somebody asks you that same question in real life, what do? You just pick up your phone and type it into Google. They give you the answer. Isn't that how it works? So this is what I mean. I could go a whole hour on this subject. I've done it in the past. I may do it again in the future. The educational system, for those of you who have diplomas and degrees, I have a degree myself. Educational system sets you up for failure. It sets you up for the exact opposite of real life. The only exception to this is if you're going to become a professor. If you're going to become a college professor, then it's setting you up for success in life, because all you're going to do, you graduated from the system. Now you're going to go teach the next group to do the same thing you did. If you want to be a college professor, then the educational system is the perfect place to learn. Now, if you're going to be anything other than a college professor or a school teacher, the educational system is not the ending of your learning. It's only the beginning. I'm not even knocking. Actually, I am knocking the educational system, but I'm a product of it. I successfully ascended up through getting a 4-year college degree, but I understood while I was still in college that this is nonsense. What happens in real life is nothing like what happens in here. I understood that while I was still in school. Some of you haven't come to accept that yet, but you will accept it one way or another. The point being, in real life, The key to advancing is asking the right question, not having all the answers. The key to advancing in life is asking the right question, even when, check this out, even when you don't know the answer. The key to advancing in life is asking the right question, even when you don't know the answer. Why? Now, why would you want to ask a question to which you don't know the answer? How is that helpful? How does that make sense, Dre? Ask a question you don't know the answer. Because aren't you still stuck if you don't have the answer? That's a good question. Let me answer that question. The reason why this matters is because when you ask a question to which you cannot answer, guess what it forces you to do? It forces you to get out of your habitual path of thinking, your habitual habits of thought, and you have to go outside of the box to start thinking differently. And when you start thinking differently, this is when you get insights. When you start getting out of your habits and start thinking differently and say, okay, well, what I've done up to this point will not solve this problem. Maybe I need to go talk to someone who knows what I don't know. Maybe I need to connect with someone who has some information I don't have. Maybe I need to stop doing things this way and start doing things this way, because clearly I can't answer this question if I keep doing what I've been doing. This is where breakthroughs happen, ladies and gentlemen, when you change your approach, but you change your approach for a reason, because you asked a question which you cannot answer. Insight is about asking questions that you cannot answer so that you are forced to step outside of the box and do things differently from how you've been doing them up to this point. This is where the 80-20 principle comes in, because this is where you can only keep the 20 in order to solve this problem that you can't solve. You can only keep this 20 and the other 80 got to go. Most people never get to this point, which is why most people don't change. A joke that I tell my audiences on my show, I got a show called Work on Your Game, comes out every day, by the way. And one of the jokes a running joke that I always use is that any of you who's been you're over the age of 30 and you haven't seen a lot of your high school classmates in a long time, you wonder sometimes what happened to them or how they're doing. And you may want to look them up on Facebook. I'll save you some time. I got a pause connection on Instagram. So let me save you some time. Any of you is wondering what happened to your high school classmates or what they look like these days, or if they have what they got going on, let me help you out. All right, here's what you need to know about your high school classmates. They haven't changed. All right, they're the same people they were when you last saw them on graduation day. The only difference is they got older, fatter, and uglier. All right, nothing else about them has changed. They're still the same people they were the last time you saw them. Now, that's a tongue-in-cheek joke, because there are some people who do grow and get better in advance. I think I've gotten better in advance since I got out of high school. I don't think I am older. I'm not fatter and I'm not uglier. I think I look better, but I am an exception that proves the rule. The general point of that is most people don't change. There are a few people who do actually grow and change in positive ways, but most people do not. So you don't need to go looking around for people who you haven't seen in 5-10 years. They're pretty much the same person they were the last time you saw them. Only thing is they have aged. That's it. Everything else is pretty much the same. So with all that said, folks, let me recap these points. Actually, one more thing from my third point here. The great riddle of life, again, is figuring out what are the things to keep and what are the things to not keep. I'll give you 2 quick anecdotes here before I wrap up, or before I recap, and then I'll take questions and comments. By the way, Work on Your Game University, you want to work with me directly, that's the place where it happens. So if you like what you saw here, next step is the university. That's the link in my bio. So there used to be this app called Odeo. Any of you heard of Odeo? Most of you probably haven't heard of Odeo, because this app, it was ODEO, like Oreo, but with a D instead of R. And Odeo wasn't really working. The people who put it out wasn't really working. They decided to strip it down and relaunch it, and they renamed it something else. They called it Twitter. Twitter is now called X, because what they realized was that the only part of the app that was really working was the part where people just got to put a little status updates, like these little short little updates in text that they could put out. That was the one part of the app that they liked. So they stripped it down, relaunched it, and just kept the part where you could put the status update. Now we have Twitter. All right. What they did was take the 20 that was working, they deleted the 80, and then they got a hit, something that worked. And I believe they sold Twitter for $44 billion. I think we can say that's a success. There was another app out there called Bourbon back in the day, BURBN. And Bourbon was an app that was kind of like Yelp and Foursquare. Y'all know those apps where you could check in to different businesses and places, and you could get points for checking in places. And they were trying to make it work for a couple of years. It wasn't really working, the developers, that is. And they said, all right, we about to shut this down because this app's not working. But there was one part of the app that was working really, really well. The one part of the app that was working was when people got to post a picture and they could do filters through the pictures. You could choose different filters for your pictures. And you could post a picture and put a little description of the picture. That was the only part of the app that people seem to be using a lot. So they said, no, what we'll do, we'll shut down this app and we'll relaunch it. But all we're going to do is we're just going to keep the part where you could post pictures with a filter and nothing else. And they gave it a new name. They called it Instagram. This is what I mean by the 80-20 principle. They took the 20% that was working, they kept it. They deleted the 80% and they relaunched the app. And that's how we got IG. All of you can do this too. But the first thing is you got to do the assessment. Like these guys did the assessment. What's working, what's not. And you got to delete the stuff that's not working. The biggest challenge I found with human beings is that they don't want to delete stuff that's not working because they are too emotionally connected to their habits, even when the habits are failing them. Let's recap these points. How to achieve more by doing less. First of all, Pareto's principle, 80-20 rule says 80% of your results come from 20% of your inputs. This applies across the board. Folks, this is not a theory. It is not an opinion. It is a principle, which means 80% of what you're about to do today is completely useless. And you're going to do it anyway. But I'm pointing it out. So maybe one of you might actually listen to this and do something different. Number two, you got to test everything to figure out what is the 80 and what is the 20. You got to look at every single thing you're doing and ask yourself, what is actually helping me reach my goal? First of all, you got to be clear on what your goal is. Do you even know? What is my goal? What am I trying to achieve? Okay. And then you look at everything you're doing and ask yourself, is this helping? Is this in its right place to help me achieve the goal? Yes or no? And you make your adjustments as necessary. And number three, remember that most of your advances in life are not due to the fact that you did more, is because you did less. You figured out the little bit that was working and you refocused on that. You quadrupled down on that. And then you got rid of everything else. That's how you advance. That's how Odeo became Twitter. That's how Bourbon became Instagram. They focused on a little bit that was working and got rid of everything else. Google, same thing. Google started as several things. They said, wow, the search engine is the thing that works. And Google is Google. All right. That's how it works. Everybody needs to do this. All of you can apply this to your lives. So let me take questions and comments right now. By the way, workonyourgameuniversity.com. If you want to work with me directly, have access to all of our trainings, courses, and frameworks, and have me as your coach, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. It's the link in my bio wherever you are watching me. Super Reese TV, good morning, sir. So you didn't know that about the maps. See, a lot of people didn't know that because nobody cared. When Bourbon was Bourbon, it wasn't working. Nobody knew about it. That's why they got rid of it. But they saw it was a little piece that was working, and they kept that little piece. Let me go over to TikTok. You got a question or comment on TikTok? I will address them now. I don't know if I saw too many comments coming through, but I wasn't always looking at the screen. By the way, I got a show that comes out every day called Work on Your Game. You can find that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Again, it's called Work on Your Game. Comes out every day for free. Heart Knows TV said you should start following people back. I don't follow anybody on TikTok because I don't use TikTok. I do not scroll on TikTok at all. So I only get on TikTok to do this. My assistant schedules the posts that we put out. We put out probably like 5, 6, 7, 8 posts a day on TikTok, but I do not scroll on TikTok. So if I was following you, I wouldn't see anything you posted anyway. I do not use TikTok as a consumer at all. Stanley says, am I related to Anquan Bolden? I remember him, but no, I'm not. I'm not related to him. Yeah, our last names are spelled different. So no, I remember him though. Somebody asked me about UFC Paris. I don't follow UFC. Someone said best way to monetize a following, sell something. If you want to monetize anything, you got to sell something. Anything that is monetized means something's being sold, whether you're selling it or somebody else is selling it. I would suggest you learn how to sell so that you control your money. Yo, man, Reed, what's going on? Appreciate you. Thank you for sharing and liking the live. Yo, man, so I quoted you on my live yesterday. Everyone's blown away. Proper credit was given. I appreciate you, sir. What'd you quote? What did I say? What were you quoting? What's going on? Indigo in Takoi. What's going on? Some introspection. Yes. Let's see. Okay, I didn't see. So I got one more. Cameron said, renting my first house. I just barely started. If I'm getting almost double the mortgage, should I double pay to get ahead on the house fast and try and get as financially free as soon as possible? You should ask somebody who is more dialed in on the real estate game, which is not my area of expertise. I can give you an answer, but I that's not my area of expertise. I would talk to someone who's more dialed in on that, and they give you a better answer than me. And that's another thing about insight. You got to know your zones of genius. Real estate is not my zone of genius. So I appreciate you asking, but that's not my area of expertise. A said, I feel like you used to play basketball. You feel like I used to play basketball? What does that even mean? I did used to play basketball, but what do you mean you feel like I played basketball? Olaf, what's going on? I'm over on Instagram now, by the way. Good morning to you. Workonyourgameuniversity.com, by the way. Flixio said, you look sharp, man, like the tie. Thank you. I like this tie too. Good thing about ties, when you wear suits, good thing about like accessories like ties and socks, and some people like to wear the pocket squares, is that you can find those relatively cheaply. You can get a whole bunch of them. So you go to places like even Ross or Marshall sometimes has some stuff, but I like Nordstrom Rack. You can find these. They'll have a big table with a whole bunch of ties and a whole bunch of socks, and you just pick the ones you like. Ross is good for socks as well. Relatively cheap. And you can get a whole bunch of accessories. So anyway, just in case any of you is into formal dressing. Appreciate that, Cameron. I'm glad again, there's people out there who talk about that stuff all the time. So I'd rather send you that way than me jumping in that lane. So anyway, everybody, 2 things for y'all to remember. You want to work with me directly, have me as your coach, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com is the link in my bio. Second thing is I have a show that comes out every single day for free. It's called Work on Your Game. You can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just type in Work on Your Game or type in my name. My name is Dre Baldwin, and we have over 3,000 episodes of that show. So if you like what you hear here, then those are the 2 things you do next. Subscribe to my show. So even if you miss the live, you can hear me talking every day for free. My shows are usually about 20, 30 minutes a piece. And it's just solo, just me. I don't have guests on my show. And then the next step after that is Work on Your Game University. That's where you can work with me directly and have me as your coach. Again, that's Work on Your Game University. As far as these lives, I do these every weekday, Monday through Friday, starting at 8 o'clock. All right, so if you want to get these, you like these, 8 o'clock, Monday through Friday, right here. And topic is, I choose a topic every morning, whatever I want to talk about. So if y'all like these, then that's what we do. So question is, all right, I think we got everything. Everybody have a great Wednesday. I'll see you all tomorrow. Work on your game. We are out of here.